Welcome to everybody all over the world. Please feel free, as every time, to say hello in your mother tongue and tell us where you are right now and listening and joining this meeting, from which place. I'm very much happy, and I have to say Laura can't be with us tonight, and Katharina is providing all the stuff which is normally done by Laura, so giving the the certificate of participation. And I think there's some other things maybe to organize that will be done by Katharina today. And I'm very, very much happy to welcome Ida to her talk. It's a third talk in the International Campus Waldorf. She's been staying with us for a long time right now. And I'm starting just to tell something about you, Ida. Ida is from the Netherlands. She's Dutch and has been a Waldorf student in Germany, in Tübingen. And she also did a Waldorf teacher training at Stuttgart Hochschule. And she's now, for more than 20 years, I think 30 years something, I don't know how long, in the US. And she has a PhD in education about Waldorf education from Stanford University, a wonderful piece of work, which is available as a book, as far as I know. And what makes her special for us is she's the founder of the Community School for Creative Education in Oakland, near San Francisco, which is a very, very special place.
And Gareth is online.
Well, out of my view, it's such a wonderful perspective because this is a school for non-privileged children. We know, all of us, we know that Waldorf is really has a certain clientele. It's for privileged children, and this is an exception, that there is a school which is for the poor. And I visited that school very often, and it's some kind of it's a peaceful paradise for the children who are maybe coming out of not a very solid social background. And she has been head of the school for a long time. She's retired now. And since she's retired, she's still working. And right now she is a senior research fellow with us at Alanus University. And I'm very much happy you are with us as a colleague, Ida, and I'm happy you can give a talk tonight about dismantling racial injustice and about constructing educational possibilities. And then you said call to action, and I'm very much looking forward to this call to action. Thank you, Ida, that you are with us tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Joost. Yes, it's Waldorf's call to action. Joost, thank you for so richly describing my background. The wonderful thing that I would just add is that I'm also a trained Stuttgart Hochschule trained handwork teacher. So of all the head, heart, and hand. Yes, I would like to say at the outset that I'm terribly happy and honored to be joining the rank of those of us who are thinking together now for a third year, and now this season, after the one in a row of incredibly inspiring talks, I want to really appreciate the critical work that brings us together from across the globe, from across the time zones, into this International Campus Waldorf. Seldom has our work as research-based Waldorf educators been more key and more crucial, I venture to say. I was reminded by a colleague from my days at Stanford 30 years ago how big a shift we've seen in the education reform landscape in the United States, but I venture to say globally. As he pointed out, now in the United States, universities no longer want to see test scores in admissions portfolios. 2, teacher evaluation systems address the teacher's attention to social emotional learning by their students. And 3, there is a new questioning of what is important and the outcomes of education beyond test scores. We as Waldorf educators think you're finally getting it, but it is key that the broader community of researchers and thereby policy makers and thereby practitioners are embracing these critical questions now. In our work here, bridging research and practice, harnessing Waldorf education, it is more critical than ever, and we must recognize that it is our task, our role, our opportunity, and our challenge to lead, not lag in this changing course, as we know it is for the better direction. Given where we sit, this bridging work means, and I will say more on this, it means using the stones in the river to build the bridge, stones that are recognized by others as, yes, they are there in the river. We just didn't know that put together they can build a bridge. Using the stones in the river that are recognized by others, working with partners who recognize the work as we do so that they can recognize us, recognizing partners who are doing the work as we do so they can recognize us, and recognizing that this is an incredibly important time to heed the call for action, both for what Waldorf education needs to do to step from behind the curtain and be visible to the world as partner, as leader who's had 100 years and plus experience in what is now seen as new as of this last 30 years, but also take the mirror and look within ourselves and see what is it that we need to deeply change? Where can our allies help us change? Where can the course of the river teach us to change so that we can meet today's children, tomorrow's adults, the world of tomorrow, as in 1919, the teachers, the curriculum, the community was meeting the children then. So with that, it is incredible, great joy, and I will focus on three things in my brief remarks and then hopefully a spirited conversation. One is the critical crisis of our time. I will be focusing on the mental health crisis, the inner crisis of the heart, students' mental health, their sense of well-being and engagement. We will think about and see how this affecting of the mental health crisis of youth and children disproportionately is affecting the traditionally marginalized, the children in poverty, the children who are Black or brown, are Native, are Asian American, Pacific Islanders, are English learners, and often are identified special education. And finally, we're going to think where we are uniquely positioned to heed the call to meet this challenge, and what are our challenges, and then what are our tasks. Finally, I want to first say, before we delve fully in, real shout out and appreciation to those on whose shoulders I stand. And most recently, I want to really appreciate Rim, your remarks on how important it is to make children feel visible, how dangerous it is when a child does not feel visible, your beautiful quote that then there is a dissonance that is created, how remarkable that you ask that we are shown how we are born to fulfill who we aim to be. Then Sven, thank you so much for pointing out that our idea is not that we are Promethean coming into the lives of our children to create them, but that we are committed to very deeply thinking about how we shape the context that is so key, and so that we can grow, to use Sven's words, and to increasingly become the people who resemble who we truly are. And finally, Martin and Virashni, thank you so much for letting us dwell on the question of what are the canonical stories that we want to always bring to our children, so that this work of making visible, of fulfilling the true person we are, is actually fulfilled through harnessing the stories of our ancestors and our backgrounds. So in that context, I'm going to take a step further, building on this, I propose, and focus on one kind of story, one kind of making visible, one kind of providing the context that'll help the child fulfill who they truly are. And that is the hero's story, the hero's journey. We will close with a story, as any Waldorf lesson will. It is a story that will take us back in our own history. It'll take us back to a very special moment of grave crisis in our Stuttgart Waldorf school, the founding school, at the eve of the Second World War. And it will be reflecting on what the hero's journey was then and how we can teach from it what the hero's journey is for us today. With that all said, I hope we can together gird our loins and begin. Last thing I should say that the case I will use, we are looking at an American case I mentioned as a US case. I hope you will agree with me that it has great relevance globally. The case I will use is Community School for Creative Education. As Joost mentioned, it's the country's, or suggested it's the country's, the US's first intercultural public Waldorf school committed to serving those traditionally not served, very much like the Stuttgart Waldorf School in 1919. It was also, I lift it up because I personally have a deep connection, but also because I suggest that it is a learning case for how we can create more such and create a broader community of intercultural spaces where children who are increasingly intercultural can be nurtured by the power of Waldorf education. Katarina, if you could bring the slides up, please. Can you all hear me? Good. I want to begin Education Week, the paper of record in the United States on education news, noted actually just 10 days ago in their headline, America has a youth mental health crisis, and how schools are aiming to help. And indeed, we have a grave and mounting crisis. We now know 42% in the United States, and just last year showed that they not only felt sad and hopeless, but also had ideations of suicide. And disproportionately far higher are those numbers when it regards children who are Black or Hispanic. There we saw that twice as many Black children and youth have ideations of suicide and report hopelessness and sadness than their white counterparts on a California Department of Education Youth Risk Behavior Survey. Just stunning. The causes of these are manifold, but an argument is being made that we can recognize that the brain among youth develops sufficiently that there's an effort to make sense and solve problems. And then in the wake of the growing problems surrounding us, from climate change to racial injustice to international strife to gun violence, here as well as abroad, children see it and recognize that they do not see how they can solve it and feel helpless. In addition, there is increasing data that the increase in use of social media is leading children to be caught in thought loops. It's a technical term of despair and distress. And in fact, also, since we were here together last week, a suit was brought in multiple states against Meta, that's Facebook and Twitter, for actually encouraging adolescents to engage in mentally unhealthful actions. And those suits are gaining a lot of traction and attention. Then, of course, we know the increased isolation due to COVID, but the numbers are not dropping, even though we are leaving COVID isolation times. So what to do? Since these data have come out, the federal government in the United States, interestingly, did the first major investment in students' mental health since right after World War II. After World War II, and some of us might remember this, first the term of PTSD was defined, post-traumatic stress, and the big investment of the federal government in the United States was in mental health, but not of children and youth, for veterans. Now, for the first time, this investment is going to children and youth, targeting children and youth, and the vehicle are schools. So an incredibly important shift. Schools are no longer seen as just to teach, but also to support well-being and engagement. Something, of course, Ark of the Covenant and Waldorf schools from the beginning, but now this shift, schools supposed to support well-being and engagement. But how do schools do that? They've never learned it, the public system. The first monies were put into what's called special education departments, so serving students who've already been identified as in need of special services. That can be speech, that can be movement. A growing number, particularly in communities of poverty as ours, are serving students who are in need of trauma prevention services or trauma support services. Again, something schools have never done and they are now doing. But how do they do it? The efforts that have been made in the last 10 years have been to set up systems and structures. A most broadly used one, again here, is called PSTZ, Positive Behavior and Support Systems, Positive Behavior and Support Systems. It is systems that teach the children to behave in ways that give them sense of positive self-being and positive action. Now, although these systems have received quite a bit of support, the recognition is, as our headline in Ed Week from this past just issue said, that the mental health crisis is not abating, it is spiking. So now the look is within. Does this sound like a path that Waldorf might have something to say about? The look is within, that it can't just be the systems. We can't mandate what matters, to use the term of my advisor at Stanford, Milbury McLaughlin. We can't mandate what matters. We can't tell the children how to feel. We have to look within. Next slide, please. And on the scene, verse one renowned leader, Angela Duckworth, a psychologist from University of Pennsylvania, who in 2013, not thinking it would make much waves, offered a talk, a TED talk, on what she called grit. And her study had shown, and it was a study, by the way, although she started the questioning when she was previously an inner city math teacher, it was when she was a professor that she could do a study with Ivy League students, so high-performing students in high-performing schools such as Harvard and Yale and Stanford and UPenn, her university. And she was able to determine that the students that did best in the study were not the ones who were best on their content, but who had the most perseverance and passion for the topic. The ones who had most perseverance and passion for the topic. And that she called grit. It went viral because everybody wanted to build grit, because she actually bravely said that it is more predictive, not just of academic performance, more predictive of personal life quality performance, but also more predictive of how much job success you're going to have. You can imagine how it swiped the world. Everybody wanted to build grit. But she admitted the puzzle that was not solved. The puzzle is, how do we build grit in children and youth? How do we build grit? And here we go to her successor. Next slide, please. the question of how to build grit, how to build perseverance and passion is tremendously key when we think of, I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional, when we think of serving children who have been not only in their own life, but in their family's life, oft generationally been underserved, been marginalized. Because what that means is that they grew up hearing, you can't do it, you won't do it, you will amount to nothing, worse things, based on the color of their skin, based on how they speak the English, based on where they live, based on how they present. You will not succeed. You can't succeed. You shouldn't be trying to succeed. And it's not just the children, it's often the families. When you come to school, it's the families who have just had terrible experiences in school, have felt that they were marginalized, that they were told that they were dumb, that they couldn't succeed. How do we then build grit? And this is where Zaretta Hammond, who's a close colleague of mine and whose book, Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain, she was writing as we were developing our schools, and she worked closely with our school and became incredibly allyship. I spoke about that working with the allies who are like-minded, very excited about Waldorf education, and quotes us in this wonderful book. She pointed out that the question of building grit, when we think about children who are traditionally marginalized, who've traditionally, generationally been messaged, you can't amount to anything, don't even try to get any passion, don't even try to persevere, you're not going to succeed, that there we have to do some deeper work. It's not just about a workshop, it's not a training, it's not going to a gym to build that grit muscle. It is changing the self-talk. How to change the story of self. How to change the story of self. Next slide, please. Now you can imagine, won't be surprised that I say this is the stage where the curtain should rise and Waldorf education should step forward. We have known about changing story of self, thinking of the story of self, how the child experiences themselves with others, with their teacher, with the class, with the world, that is the arc of the covenant of Waldorf education. Now I want to pause to say, let us look at one example where we have focused on changing the story of self, on strengthening the story of self, and focused on doing so through the stories, through the heroes' stories. I want to pause now to say, why would we even pay attention to any Waldorf school? Why would we pay attention to this Waldorf school? I want to pause to look at the case and use a little bit of data. I know sometimes we are impatient with data because it's very dull. It's much nicer to look at watercolor pictures than on numbers. But if we want to build our relationship with our allies, if we want to have the curtain lift and step from behind the curtain and say, we know something that we all need to embrace and get better at together, we need to learn the language of the land. We want to use the coin of the realm. And data is that. In the United States and globally, I think if it is the same, that however much the universities are not insisting on test data to decide on admissions, all through K-12, all the funding, all the attention, all the recognition, and all the trust of parents to send a child to their school is based on how are they doing academically. So for this reason, I want to take a minute to look at community school. Because community school, it is a Waldorf school, we're very proud, but it is also breaking the norm. It is showing that it can be done with children who otherwise traditionally are low performing. We are an outlier. We don't want to be. We want to become the norm. And that's why we think Waldorf education has such a task to bring more intercultural Waldorf schools to the communities that need it most. But we begin with the dull data. So, Community School for Creative Education. It's among the most diverse, as Joost indicated, in Oakland, which is among the most diverse cities in the US, which is one of the most diverse countries on the globe. Not the only one, but among. We are founded in 2009 and 180 children, TK8. And importantly, we are recognized at 100% poverty school and enjoy, feast your eyes on the diversity of our children and the beautiful rainbow over our school. Next slide, please. Joost also mentioned how, just a very quick thumbnail of the school. So we did not gentrify. We started in serving children in poverty, 70%. We went up. We're now between 80 and 90%. That is what these data show. Next slide, please. We are also, we did not gentrify in terms of diversity. We started diverse, and all too often a good thing will, even if it starts serving children in poverty, will be visited and enjoyed by people who have resources and choice and options, and then very quickly will be overwhelmed by them. And we can call that, we sometimes call that being overwhelmed by whiteness and wealth. We stayed diverse. We have white children, Caucasian community is strong, but we have this rich assemblage, which so much represents the richness of the world. So we did not gentrify. We stayed ethnically diverse and continue to become so. Next slide, please. We also did not gentrify in that we continue to be linguistically diverse. That is so very important. You see the colors show the different colors of the languages our families represent. We're really happy that actually, and Joost will remember that over the past 3 years, we've also had an added growing Arab community, and as well as our Tongolese and our Cantonese and our Cambodian and our Filipino and Hispanic and white. Next slide, please. And finally, if we look at ourselves compared to what in America is called the district, the cluster, like in Germany, the Oberschule, the cluster of schools that is managed together. The cluster in Oakland is called Oakland Unified School District. And here we compare the percent of students who are poor, the percent of students who are English learners, and the percent of students who are in special ed services, all highly vulnerable groups. On the right, we see community schools, the gold, the purple, and the green. In the middle, we see Oakland Unified. In the left, we see the state. And we see that we are poorer, we have more English learners, and we have more children with special needs than either the district or the whole state of California. Next slide, please. So now we think, so how did we do? Well, here we compare, staying with the city, the community school on the right, Oakland in the middle, and then the state on the left. We want to pay attention to the green and blue bars on the top, because that shows in the annual test on student achievement, this is for English language arts, how well we are doing. And the green and the blue means that's the percent of children who are either meeting the standard or are exceeding the standard. So that's the good thing. Well, compared to the much richer district and the even much richer state, we're not doing bad. We're not where we want to be, but we're not doing bad. We'd like to have a couple more percentages, but we want to note that not bad compared to who we are serving and how far behind they come to us. But then if we take the next slide, we look at the most vulnerable groups in our school, because that's the leading indicator of where we're going. And look how the dynamic changes. So on the right, we again have our school, and the green and the blue for our school is higher percentage than Oakland or the state. We are outperforming in data, in old-fashioned test data, that's not where Waldorf schools start, but in old-fashioned test data, as the coin of the realm, we are outperforming the district and the state. If we look at the children who are English learners who have been in the US system for more than 12 months. This is important because this is where children get stuck, as the term goes, because they are English learners, so they don't have access to content, so they don't get better in their content, and they don't get better in their English, and they get more increasingly marginalized. Next slide, please. Final slide on data. Students with disabilities. This is even more remarkable. Look at how much green and blue for community school. And this is this year, this past year. This is the hot off the press data. We outperformed the district and the state. Now, this is a puzzle. This is a riddle. This is a research task. Anybody who wants to get at it, please help us, because we're trying to understand what is we as Waldorf School doing right by the measures of the land test data, which is not our floor. That's not where we start, but this is where our children are succeeding. And don't get me wrong, our children need to succeed here. We can't say, oh, we're not teaching reading until 3rd grade because the children need time. Our children don't have time. Our children, their families lose their job, they lose their housing, there's a problem with their immigration status, so they have to go when the child is in 2nd grade, and then they go to a next school. If they enroll and they can't read at grade level, they are put in remedial. And if they're in remedial, in no time, if you're Black or brown, you're in special ed and you will never get out. So our children don't have time to build the grit, but we need to give them the safe passage, which is a tension point, but we need to do it in a way that nurtures them to build their confidence, their passion, their purpose, to change their story of self. And this is where I want to go now. What are we doing right in changing that story of self? How are we responding to that call of Angela Duckworth, of Zaretta Hammond, of the big mental health crisis contenders? Next slide, please. This is where I now want to turn to another ally who are walking the same path, with whom we are now starting to build a common language. For our conceptual framework, I was so happy to be introduced, and I had a chance to speak with both these wonderful gentlemen now in preparation for the work I'm doing now, and of course for our talk. Here on the left, we see Professor Philip Zimbardo of Stanford University. And a number of you might remember the Stanford prison experiment, sometimes called the Zimbardo Stanford prison experiment in 1971. And it is actually worth a moment. But first, our introduction. I wrote to him when I realized that after he did his Stanford prison experiment in 1971, more detail on that in a minute, he actually, when he then turned 70, Zimbardo is now 90, when he turned 70, he said, I do not want to die being remembered for the Stanford prison experiment. And I want to tell you what it is, and then tell you what it led him to then turn to heroic imagination. His experiment at Stanford in 1971, he was a young psychology professor, is that he took a group of Stanford students, so this is not inner city students, it's Stanford students, and he designed an experiment. He identified some were the prisoners, some were the prison guards, and he was the prison superintendent. And his experiment was to see how much people would respond to the roles they were given and fall into those roles when they act. How much do people fall into the roles they were given and fall into those roles when they act? The experiment was supposed to run 6 weeks, the larger part of a quarter. At Stanford, it's quarters, not semesters, so that then there'd still be 3 weeks of analyzing the data together. He had to stop after a week. He had to stop because of how everybody fell into their role. The prisoners, unbelievably docile and afraid. The prison guards, brutal, abusive, mean. And he himself even felt that he was not feeling good about his actions. Interestingly, he said, I would have kept going, but it was my girlfriend, who later became his wife, who said, you're not doing good. You're not doing something right now. You have to stop this or I will stop our relationship. So he stopped. And he did not stop soon enough that it wasn't already picked up in the news. It was very broadly reported, and it has gone down as the Stanford prison experiment that shows that suggests that we will act according to the roles that we are given, and we will act according to the expectations thereof. So now at 70, he said, I want to do more. I want to actually take seriously, if it is true, this is so key, if it is true that we act according to the roles that we are given and the expectations thereof, that is not just true of being able to do evil. This is his words, not mine. It is also true of being able to do good. And he articulated a new concept that is now actually mounting research, where I think we have a role to play. Everybody's going to get homework. He identified a key concept, the concept of heroic imagination. The concept of heroic imagination. And he said the concept of heroic imagination can be nurtured, can be built, just like other capacities can be built. In imagination, fear can be built. But heroic imagination is something that can be nurtured and grown, and not haphazardly. It's by giving children the opportunity to experience that they themselves are on a hero's journey, that the children can feel that they have a hero within, that they can learn to live up to, that they can start by thinking, I'm a hero in waiting, then say, I'm a hero in training, and then say, I'm going on the hero's journey. Very quickly, remarkably, a heroic imagination body of research started to be developed. There's a journal. There are a number of universities that offer classes in it. There's research. So I wrote to Professor Zimbardo 3 weeks ago and asked him, would he be willing to speak with me about heroic imagination and Waldorf education? Professor Zimbardo is now 90. I didn't expect a quick reply. He wrote back in 15 minutes. I got an email back 15 minutes after I'd sent it. He would very much like to do the work. Unfortunately, he is now not well enough. He is 90. But he referred me to his colleague, Matt Langdon. I reached out to Matt Langdon and I spoke with him at greater length. He is very excited that we are having this conversation now. He says anybody who wants to speak with him further about the intersection of heroic imagination and Waldorf education, he'd love to talk. And I will be speaking with him and his colleague on Wednesday to develop a research project around heroic imagination and Waldorf education. And others are welcome to join. But I say this to say, this is when we start stepping out from behind the curtain. It looks like they didn't even know that we are engaged in hero's journey thinking as much as they are, and frankly have been doing it for over 100 years. Next slide, please. I want to say a word about how he and his colleague, Matt Langdon, developed the hero's journey and heroism. and then speak about where Waldorf and the Heroic Imagination project, where they are the same and where we enhance and where we can learn. So the Hero's Journey by Zimbardo and Langdon is, and Langdon refers to Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey is in 5 stages: the mundane world, call to adventure, threshold, passive trial, master of 2 worlds, where we are changed, and so we can start changing the world around them because we are ourselves changing, growing. Don't all say ho hum, we know this. This is saying what we teach in kindergarten. This is what we teach in Parzival. This is what our stories do. They show us this. That is why we have our fairy tales and our myths and our biographies. But now is an opportunity because the heroic imagination is articulated by somebody so top line as Philip Zimbardo that we say we have actually been doing this for 100 years. And it is not just a soundbite moment. It is something that we don't just do as a training in schools, which they are now doing to build the heroic imagination. This is something that is the Ark of the Covenant of the Waldorf School from kindergarten to 12th grade or 13th grade. And it is not just something that is a one size fits all, let's all do the same activities to build the hero's journey. It is something in Waldorf education that is developmental. And last not least, it is not something that is something that we only engage in through trainings, but it is something that we engage in through head, heart, and hand. On the other hand, so there we have a lot to bring to the table, but we can also learn. This we know about the archetypical features of the hero's journey, and we think about how much we hope that our children, we don't use the hero's journey when we think about it necessarily, but we are thinking that our biggest quest when the children enroll in our schools is that they actually discover the strength in themselves and go forth and fulfill their task and their quest. And we know they will meet hurdles, and we try to give them all the support so that they can be brave and move through it. And what can we learn from them? Next slide, please. One is that with Langdon in the lead, but Zimbardo and Langdon together have been very good at thinking we need to be careful that it isn't the white knight on the horse heroism. That's not going to meet the growing number of children in diverse backgrounds and who are not white. So we need to do 3 other things. So they said 4 things are key: to democratize, anybody can be a hero, really important. Demystify that every person can be a hero. Every person is a hero in waiting, a hero in training. Those who are not acting heroic are reluctant heroes, but everybody has that germ. And diffuse away from the solo heroes to their term hero ensembles. How are we learning to work together? All things that we in Waldorf schools want to build, but this is a wonderful framework to make it visible to others who might not know about Waldorf. And finally, to declare. They beautifully have a website now where we could all go and declare our willingness to go on the hero's journey right after my talk. But it's a deeper declaration, making public a commitment to journey towards heroism, and think how this is taken. Every journey starts with the first step through daily deeds of service. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, I'm going a little bit fast. I hope that you are with me. I will, in a minute, stop to take questions. Katarina, let me know if there's a burning question. Otherwise, I will continue the arc of our argument and then engage in discussion.
There isn't.
Oh, very good. Then I will proceed. If you can just stretch a little bit in your seat. We're almost at the end of our windy path. But staying with this partnership So this is one example of an ally where we've taken the issue, burning issue of our time, mental health crisis. We've looked at what the ambitions are of what to do to build grit. And then we've recognized how our topic, those traditionally marginalized racially, how they have impediments to building grit, that we need to change the story of self to do that. And how do we do that? And now we're looking at a partner who says, I have a beginning of how we can do this. Heroic imagination is the conception, and we can do it by giving trainings on how to build heroism, how to get on the journey to become heroes. And in their word, help your child find their inner hero. Langdon, in his practicality, a lovely man who is just so excited that we are engaging this conversation now, even just this year came out with a hero's handbook for children. And one example is meaningful to me. Next slide, please. Because it gets to who are our heroes, where we have a real growing edge. It can't always be the white knights that a lot of our canon does represent. And they are really speaking to, and this is one example, creating a metaphorical round table with your children or youth and making the table that seats all the best in your life. This is allowing the child or the youth or the parent, and also the colleagues, to be in touch with their heroes, and then let them, those imaginary people, sit and advise you and give 6 seats. So it can be 6 different kinds. Who is very good in meeting difficult tasks, who is very good in inspiring, etc. Another example he has is of sitting together with each other and then with parents, and ask, tell me, who is your hero now, one hero of yours now, and who was one hero of yours when you were a teenager? Why were they a hero, and why were they a hero? And tell us about them. What we're doing here, and this is their word that I offer as one we can use in common, is harvesting hero stories. I want to look back again to last week when we were asking, what are the right stories to tell? If we want to do this of building the inner hero, recognizing the hero within, how important, and we're trying to change the story of self. So we do not want to overwhelm with stories of these guys are already really successful and impressive, but you are not like them. You don't look like them. You'll never be them. So this is where we want to pay a new level of attention as Waldorf educators. Where is the story of the hero optimally positioned to unlock, to bring to life the inner hero? Next slide, please. We want to give a little bit of an example of what we've been doing in Heroes Journeys. We've been asking our families who their heroes are. That's shaped the stories that we bring. And a wonderful example, actually, just 2 months ago, when we did our Festival of Courage, is the children. This is a kindergartner. They made their own capes. They dyed the capes in turmeric, and then they were able to don the capes as heroes. And it is wonderful how proudly they sport their capes, their heroes' capes, and that then the 2nd and 3rd graders also wanted hero capes. But the experience that the children made the capes themselves from the turmeric in which they dyed the silk. Next slide, please. So we have an opportunity and a challenge with heroism. One person's hero is another person's villain. So we want to be tremendously careful that the heroes that we bring, we think are beautiful from the Waldorf canon, but they are from the 1920s and not from inner city Oakland, for example, that can do the inverse. And secondly, it is so important that as we do our work, building our heroes canon, that we ensure that others are listening, that we are in conversation with other allies. Next slide, please. A beautiful example there is when a student had the opportunity to actually touch the former President Obama's hair. What do we do so that our stories allow the child to feel this hero is like me? They have hair like mine. I could be them. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I want to, in closing, go to a very moving moment for me, which is a story of our own history lesson. It is a story of probably the deepest crisis that Waldorf movement met since its founding, which was March 30, 1938, when it was asked to close. It was closed under the rise of National Socialism by the orders of the government. It is very moving to me because the transcript of the final assembly, of which this is an excerpt, where the noted Mr. Titman addressed the third grade, the transcript was in the possession of a then Waldorf student, Liesel Berlin Francescelli, who was enrolled in the class of 1923. So when the first school was 4 years old. Before her death, she gave me the transcript, and I have treasured it. And this is the first time I share, and it is incredible honor for me to share it with you. I want us to, when we listen to the words of the third grade teacher on that day in March 30, 38 in Stuttgart, and you must remember, this is in the assembly room of the building you see here. It is filled to the gills. Everybody is in their Sunday best. The orchestra is ready to play the opening adagio of the Fifth Symphony. Duke Bottmar, Graf Bottmar, is ready to, at the end, say, and now officially the school is closed. And remember, this was a time Emil Molt, who had bankrolled the school, had been dead less than 2 years ago, and Steiner had been dead less than 20 years ago. How much could it feel like this was the end of Waldorf education? And at that moment, how did the teacher speak to the children? Was it a raised fist, a clenched rage at the forced closure? What was the task of his address? Or do we hear an inkling of giving the child the seed to go forth and be on a hero's journey? Let me read. Dear children of the third grade, and if I get emotional, please clap so I can continue. And I say this in memory and honor of Liesel. Dear children of the third grade, the most beautiful tree was growing on a very high mountain, which bore the most delicious fruit, both in summer and in winter. And whoever tasted of it became healthy in body, strong in soul, and bright in spirit. But only a few people knew these trees. However, a hermit lived on the mountain to whom the children came from the valley. He gave them of this delicious fruit, and they became healthy in their bodies, strong in their souls, and bright in their spirit. One day, though, this tree was struck by lightning, and the hermit knew the children would no longer be able to eat off the tree. And when they came to him again on the mountain, he said, "Dear children, it will now be a long time before you will again be able to eat off this tree, because it was struck by lightning." The children then called out, "Oh, why did this have to happen?" And the hermit replied, "This too happened according to God's will." And he distributed the fruit which was still on the tree among the children and said, "Eat once more, and then take the kernels with you down into the village and you will all put them into your gardens. And if you place them into a good soil, they will germinate and grow. And if you shelter and care for them, they will one day become trees and bear fruit, just as delicious as our old tree, which we have now lost. Then the children took the kernels and planted them in their gardens. Dear children, what you have received here at the Waldorf School were those precious fruits of the wonderful tree. But today we give you the kernel to take with you, plant in your heart, and, into the best earth area of your heart. Protect and tend and sprout the little growing plant. Then later, the tree which bears such wonderful fruit will also grow, and you will be healthy in your body, strong in your soul, and bright in your spirit. Are we not the fruits of those seeds? And can we not go forth and plant the seeds? And how would we tell the story to our children if they were inner city Oakland or wherever we are in the world, to do that same, giving the kernel of strength to help the children go on the hero's journey to meet all the challenges that are imposing on them so that they can help dismantle institutional racial injustice. This is our call to action to the world. It is also the call to action to ourselves. Thank you so much. We can stop sharing. Oh, there's a slide of just taking questions.
Thank you so much, Ida. And that was a very much moving story. Thank you. You always are moving us with your stories. Thank you so much. So we are open now for a dialogue and have questions and comments about it. My question would be this, Lisa, this was a student, a friend of yours at school time?
Lisa?
Yeah.
Lisa, no, she was a student who was enrolled in the Stuttgart Waldorf School in 1923. So she was elder. So I met her before her death, and remarkably, she chose to give me the transcript. I was so touched. But the family was Jewish, so she had to then flee Germany, first to Mexico City, and then came to Spring Valley, New York, where we met.
Mm.
I have on the PowerPoint, and I'll share both the references and also the contact of Matt Langdon, who I say is willing to, if any of us are interested in joining a conversation with him, he would love to do that. I will share that after.
There's a question in the chat room by Belle Loing, who is, by the way, a doctorate student of mine. And maybe, Belle, you can put it yourself, and I think Ida will find a wonderful answer for that.
Hello, Ida. Nice to meet you. Thank you very much for your sharing, especially from the beginning of your understanding of Waldorf education is to fulfilling the true person of a child who is supposed to be. I have the same understanding and perspective to preserve the integrity of a child in my understanding. So my question in listening to your presentation about this heroic image, which is very inspiring, but I also is skeptical about it because it happened also today because it's Halloween. Everybody here is having a Halloween party at my children's school as well. And my children asked me, can we also do trick or treat? And I immediately told them, we don't do this here in Germany, and we don't do it in China as well. And it happens to us. It's like almost every child asks their parents today, as far as I know, my friends' children as well, ask the same question, because they're associated with this, and they don't understand what's behind, and why are we forbidding them to do. No? So when you propose this interesting case, my understanding is it a responsive or an adaptation to the nowadays societies, because we are having this kind of challenge, depression phenomenon for our youngsters? Is this like a possible way, a tool to use in the US? And maybe what is your opinion about what is with other culture then? Is heroic imaging also applying to other culture as well?
Oh my goodness, that's a lot of rich questions, and thank you for sharing. Let me say one thing, and hopefully it'll respond. I think it's a broader question. The trick or treat is, you mean the sinisterness of the trick, whether we want to be doing trick or treating. They actually have a wonderful a piece that I didn't detail, is that next to the banality of evil, which they adopt from Hannah Arendt, and which some of us are very familiar with, is the banality of good. But that if you don't do good, then you allow the space for evil. And the point is also that the opposite of a hero is not a meanie, is not a villain. The opposite of a hero is a bystander. And how important it is that whatever we do, the nurturance of heroism, that it is taking the risk for the good. So you're not just falling into buying a costume off the rack and doing trick or treating, but it is finding your way to do a courageous act for the good. I don't know if that responded, or it would be wonderful to talk more offline, actually, which would be nice anyway.
You're muted, Belle. You have to do it again.
Okay, it's really nice to hear about the other side of the hero imagination, and yeah, but my question was also in the children's understanding. So far as I talk to them, their understanding of heroes are superheroes from the Marvels, Spider-Man, Superman, and maybe Wonder Woman. So for me, the second question in my meeting chat room is, if they are associating with unrealistic person, is it problematic?
Oh yeah, thank you very much. So that's why I thought it's so just wonderful. That's why I think we can really take advantage of our colleagues' idea of harvesting hero stories, where we get beyond the media imposed stories and say, start with the parents, who are your heroes? And then really learn from them, and then from the children, who are your heroes when you're not thinking in terms of movies and media, but in your heart of hearts, ones who can guide you. But it's a key question. We need to reclaim heroism from the mainstream media.
Maybe I will give some comment to this before I pass the word to Christoph. When you spoke about that concept of hero and having heroic image, you know, there is in the study of man, there is this passage in the which lecture is it right now? The fourth lecture about the development of the will. There is the stage which is called the wish, and I think this stage, which is called wish in the study of man, fourth lecture, this is about the wish to become a better person. And you know, there is some power in it, there's energy in it, and everyone has this wish to become a better person. But after a while, and maybe by encounter the world and having bad experiences, there's some kind of depression, frustration, and you lose that wish. And maybe this image of a heroic, being a hero, this is like an image this is the energy for development. And if we don't address that energy within every child to become a better person, why should they develop? Why should they do something? And this is something very strong within us and a very pure stage of will. And I was reminded by that when you spoke about this wonderful heroic image.
Thank you. Thank you for the reference. That's key.
Yeah. Christoph.
Yeah. Ida, thank you so much. It was a wonderful presentation again. I'm very happy to hear that Philip Zimbardo doesn't want to be known as the man of the prison experiment, but you know it was heavily criticized out of the psychological world, especially about the setup. And as far as I know, it has lost its glamour, so to speak. The wonderful thing is about a heroic imagination. I think always all stories are basically about heroes, female and male. Every story is a kind of a metaphor, archetypal about the way the humans go. I always think this hero's story or hero's imagination is a reflection of your better self, for what you're striving, a little bit like Joost said. So I'm about Zimbardo. I'm sorry to say that that part about this prison experiment, it was later repeated and not so successful, by the way. But I have another question. I have often seen your data, and I love your data because they are wonderful. But in the next presentation, I would like to hear from you how your teachers did that.
Yeah.
With the students, that these data are so wonderful, how they did it.
Yeah.
And that is still for me a kind of a riddle, because these data are outstanding good, but what is the miracle? What it was that it worked? I would love to have a little insight how they did it, because they do it till today. I know you say always it's Waldorf, okay, but it is more. And what is the technique is the wrong word, but what makes it happen that it works so well? Do you understand my question?
Yeah. No, it's my question. It's the right question. I think that is really why we became so interested in this point of the power of the story and heroic imagination, because we thought maybe this can get at what is happening at our school that is not happening in the school down the block, whose data I could show you where they are lower performing. And is it not so much how we teach the reading, but is it that we embrace it with the stories and with the children being able to have moments where they can experience their higher self, to use your words. But this is a riddle. It's not an easy thing to explain, and none of us as at the school know it yet, but we know we have to keep at it. And we need to get to the answer, because otherwise we can't replicate. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it is. It's. I guess you would do the community a huge favor if you give some examples how it worked in your school.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Yeah. So, but nevertheless, thank you so much. Huh?
Yeah, you're welcome. You mean just explaining how they dyed the silk and turmeric That doesn't explain all the data, and then they can be heroes. It's a research question. Yes, give more examples.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So there has been, by Bell, triggered some answers to this question of a hero, and I just want to quote it from the chat. So it has been Alan who is also raising his hand. He speaks about a role model, maybe as a better word for it. And Shiva, she gives a wonderful comment. In my opinion, a hero is someone who battles their inner darkness and finds their inner light. And bringing this as an archetypal image to children through stories will guide them to find their own inner light. And Benedict says it's about attitude, isn't it? So those are comments from the chat, Ida, if you want to say something about it before Alan has the word.
No, thank you very much. I think those are all critical points. It's really how are we building those attitudes? Thank you.
Alan.
Thank you, Joost. I think you covered it really. It's just that for me, role model seems closer and more accessible, and hero or heroic seems more distant. And to John's point, it seems more Hollywood, whereas the role model, who's doing the modeling? I am. I'm going to model myself on the individual that I respect and admire. So I think it's a safer use of language. I think I use the word comfortable in the chat. Thank you.
Will.
Hello. I'm working in a school at the moment where I work in the learning support department, and it's occurred to me that children who maybe don't have the kind of perceived intelligence of other children, their self-image suffers because of that. And perhaps as well as it being the stories we're telling, it's also how we're teaching the children to kind of find their own talents and what our own perception of intelligence is. Yeah, and I think there's still a way to go with that. So children actually feel comfortable in what they can do. Because I see so many lessons with children who don't fit into a classroom norm, and therefore they have this image that they can't do something. And that image is constantly being kind of reinstated through this experience of not fitting in with the norm. So yeah, I think there's still some work to do about redefining, perceived norms, and yeah, how we teach children and what we teach them. Yeah.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more.
Thank you. Anna Kuh had asked Ida if it would be possible to have a transcript of that story.
Yeah. I can actually share the transcript of the whole assembly. Will be very nice. It's also available through the the short answer is yes. It's also with the Goetheanum archives. I will share it. I will share it with Katrina, and she can share it with the participants.
Thank you. Are there other comments or questions? Dirk.
Yeah, it's so your talk was a little bit diverse. This touching story in the end, it really kept me. It's such a nice story, and what Martin Tittmann said in 1938. But I want to relate to what Christoph said. it's a more maybe a sort of a basic and superficial question, but can you say a little bit more about this testing? When you say your school performed better than others or performed so well compared to the state and the city and so on, what sort of testing is this? And after you answer this question, I have a second one.
I think you're familiar with the PISA test. It's very much like the PISA test. So it's multiple choice. There's a little bit of open-ended, and it's multiple choice and open-ended, and it's once a year. It's from 3rd grade on, and it's tremendously consequential. It's weighted very seriously in terms of funding and recognition.
Okay, thanks for that. And then another question relating to the beginning of your talk, when you said the social crisis and you related to all forms of what
mental crisis.
Yeah, crisis and suicides and all that. So here in Germany, we have really, it's a very big topic here, and what we saw and what we experience in our schools, all sorts of schools, not only Waldorf schools, all sorts of schools, is that it became much worse during the Corona time. This isolation of the students staying at home in front of a computer and so on. And so we are still working on this question here. What can we do for the students after the Corona time to improve their mental health, so to say, in general? Did you experience the very same in the States?
Yeah, very much. That it's yes, I that's what I was trying to suggest. First of all, very serious, and concerningly, we're past Corona, but it hasn't abated. The crisis is still very strong. I don't know if it's getting better in Germany.
Okay, then one last remark, because this relates again to Christoph. Here we discuss not only among Waldorf schools, but also among alternative schools. We have quite a number of school forms which not only try to teach the students intellectually, but also to do a whole lot of handcraft works, gardening, and going out to farms, out into nature, and so on. And we believe, we are not quite sure yet, but we do experiments in this way, that we say, well, like one colleague of mine from a different school, he said, well, during Corona time, the students were not able to go on on field trips, for example. So when they missed a field trip in grade 9, now in grade 10, they're back in school. Then we do, instead of doing not skipping the field trip, so they just was bad luck for them, so to say. Instead, they go on 2 field trips in grade 10. On one to repeat what they missed in grade 9, and an additional one. And so I think maybe this is a discussion point here in Germany that answers a bit maybe what Christoph asked also. We try to teach in such a broad, practical way in Waldorf schools. And Steiner argues all the time that the intellect is not only in our head, it's all in our fingertips. So maybe this helps to overcome the Corona disaster, so to say. And also maybe this is a little bit of an explanation for your good grades, or for your students doing so well. Would be worthwhile to compare how much practical work students do in other schools, just one block further, or in your city or so. Yeah?
No, I so appreciate that, because it's even true in the extreme. First of all, the mental crisis has spiked, but because of that, the grades have dropped. So there's been a lot of pressure to do away with arts, to do away with field trips, because we're so behind and we have to catch up from Corona. And so it's such a good point. And thank you for connecting to Christoph's question to actually show, not just here, but maybe also make some comparisons in other countries, how those of us who say now even more it's important to do the gardening, the field trips, the artwork, the dyeing of cloth is key. Yeah, I think it's a key point.
Are there other questions or comments?
I think I want to add one thing, if there's not right now, to Christoph's question, and maybe also a little bit Dirk's. What is it that we do different? One is that we, and this is not explaining it all, but how important it is that we have the focus on the rhythm and the handwork and the practical work. The other is, it is so important that we are a community school and that we're working with the families. And that was important in Corona, that we would send Waldorf art boxes home with the academic boxes and with the food supplies and with the medical care needs. And that it was so important that the families, that they give the stories, that they tell us what the festivals are, that we work together, I think is a critical part. I think it's very much in continuation of Waldorf School as first design, that thereby we're really bringing the children's lived experience from home into school. And so it is a deeper safety.
May I say something critical, Ida?
Yes.
It enlarges for me the riddle, what you now said. Because the traditional Waldorf schools in Europe, they do art, they do field trips, I do not know what they do. And still, they have problems to perform academically.
That is not true, Christoph.
Is it not true?
No, that is not true.
But for the lower school, it is true.
That might be, but if you compare the final results, Waldorf schools have a better performance than other schools.
In the end, it is more or less the same level. That's true.
This is maybe due to the fact that they have very educated parents. But you know, Dirk, he's an expert because he did his habilitation about the final exam.
I don't want to say. Nicolina actually wanted to say.
Yes, I have her in mind.
She raised her hand, and then she found the little sign how to raise the hand on screen, and then she took it down again. I think it's much more important that she says something. But what Christoph says, I mean, I only know the data here from especially from Germany, but also from other European countries, and the Waldorf students are at average, they're performing much better than the state school students actually. But this is what we are not sure is that it might be true because of a very special clientele. It might be more due also to the parents because the rate of academics at home is so much higher in Waldorf amongst the Waldorf parents than compared to the state school parents and so on. But and then when we always hear these stories about not being able to correctly read and write and so on. And so we got some data that this might be more true for those who don't go to Waldorf school beginning with grade 1, but they come later to Waldorf schools, like in grade 4 or 5 or 3. And because these are the ones, they fail first in a state school, and then they come to a Waldorf school, and so they need a whole lot of extra treatment and so on. And yeah, it's quite a diverse question, Christoph, but the data show more into the opposite direction, actually. Yeah. But so Nicolina wanted to say something.
Yeah. And there's also there is a proof by PISA test, because it's all in the PISA test has been done with Austrian Waldorf schools, and especially in mathematics, there has been the results has been much better than in other schools. So there's a lot of data around that area about academic school performances. Nicolina.
Thanks a lot. I was thinking a lot about everything that was said, and Ida, thank you for the lecture. It was really, really nice to hear from you again. And thank you all for your contributions to this discussion. I was thinking a lot about Christoph's question, why is it so that you performed so good? And something came to me, and you actually said it just a while ago. You are very, very proud on having the school where children are integrated, where children are being recognized, regardless of their status, of their background, national, racial, whatever. And I would say that that is very much a key point, as you noted, because what I have experienced, I was a teacher, currently not teaching, but I was a teacher for 14 years, 2 generations, 1.5, I would say, so much less than you. But what I have discovered in my teaching is that the biggest hero actually for every child is their teacher. When they come to class 1, you are not the hero. You're almost on the level of deity, right? And what you can do for your children, this is what I came with because of my past. I came to the classroom as teacher with the intent of loving the most challenging child in my class, each and every one of them, especially the most challenging one, and trying to teach them that everyone has something that we can see as something special, as something worth giving attention to. And when you spend 8 years with your children in that atmosphere, teaching them that okay, they cannot do something right now, but time is not something that has to be rushed. Everybody has to give themselves some time, but that all of you are there to help each and every one of them to develop to most of their potentials. What I found out is that even those children who had struggled with reading, with calculations, mathematics, they would be so eager to deal with their own issues and all their struggles, because you have seen them for who they are and you were there to help them. And you make the most cleverest children in the classroom actually not to be the clever ones, but to be the ones who would be the servants for the rest, to help them in a way. I would say that this is something, and then you can see actually that these children do have potentials to do these kinds of tests because they are eager to learn. I remember Christoph giving a lecture once upon a time, one of the lectures that I have been translating in Zagreb seminar for teachers. And he said, every single day at the end of the lesson, you ask the children, so children, what have we learned today? What have we learned today? That is so important, so that they actually know that they are not here in school, in Waldorf school, just to hear stories and about many different heroes, but that they are there also to learn. So in that way, I would say it's a compilation of many, many things, but I would say that the crucial ingredient is that if we set ourselves on this goal, on this hero's path to be the ones who will recognize each, and that is not always easy. We all know that we can love even the most challenging child and be willing to help each and every one of them and teach them to help themselves. This is something that is very special. And of course, I would also add that when you have the teachers who actually know how to deal with the curriculum and how to foster that sense of coherence that our curriculum is so organically developing, then we have the dart to hit the bullseye, I would say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nicolina. Our time is up, but there's one last remark question, I don't know, by Benedict.
Yes, thanks. I tried to keep it very short. From my own opinion, I just want to add that in the case, and maybe the case is pretty, the possibility for the case is pretty high, that the crisis around our communities and around our schools, around our societies are increasing. I can imagine that for several people here, and for teachers especially, it could be very useful to have a look and maybe have a dip into the work of Dr. Jem Bendel. I don't know if somebody already heard of it. He's working on similar issues like Joanna Macy. And the topic of deep adaptation, where he's working on, could be something very interesting. It just popped up in my mind. I wanted to share something in the chat. Maybe I can do it within a minute, but I I don't have it right next to me, but maybe I still can do it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Benedict. Maybe you can write the names into the chat room so that we can Google them and have a better look at it. Any last words from your side, Ida?
No, just incredible gratitude that we had this spirited conversation. I'd leave, as I hope, with more questions.
Thank you so much. So that was really a moving session. And just to let you know, because this is such a special situation with the new war ongoing in Israel and Palestine, and we have the war in Russia and Ukraine, and there's a new war. And in just a couple of weeks, I heard that you might know of Ilan Leibner, who has been responsible editor of the Waldorf Research Journal, and his stepson has been murdered by Hamas at the festival. And so this is something I got the message by Douglas Gerwin, who was with us. And I often think about the situation there with Gilad Goldschmidt, who has been talking to us here, and about the Waldorf situation there. So, and yeah, coming here together and have this circle of friends and all over the world, this is really also a moving thing. But we are facing a very, very cruel situation in our time right now, with a lot of aggression. Yeah, thank you therefore for coming together very much. Next Tuesday, I'm very much happy to have a totally different topic, but it's so important, and you don't connect it very much to Waldorf. It's a question of technology. It's often, there are doubts about how much into technology is Waldorf. And we of course know that Rudolf Steiner was very much conscious about the technological development of the time. And I'm very much happy that Dirk is addressing that topic. How do we teach technology at Waldorf schools? So looking forward to see you next Tuesday. Have a good night, a good day, wherever you are, and looking forward to see you all again. Goodbye.
Thank you, Ina.
Okay.